Dr. Uche again, back to discuss my next read. So, today I'm talking about The Vanishing Half by Brit Bennett. I read this some time ago, a couple of weeks ago, and wow, this was quite a fascinating and well crafted book. So, the book talks a lot about colorism in the Black community. It follows twin girls, later women, Stella and Desiree, born into a small town in Louisiana, I believe. Mallard, the name of the town, a fictional town. So these girls are born fairly light skinned, is my understanding. And in Mallard, seems that a lot of people, Mallard is a small town with mostly black people, but who turned out to be mostly very light skinned. And it seemed to be what everybody in the town aspired to do or to be light skinned and to make sure their children were light skinned and so on and so forth. So a lot of colorism in this book. So Stella and Desiree get bored by the sameness of it all, and they actually run away from home. They had a very traumatic childhood. They witnessed their father being shot for having done nothing. Basically, some white people came and shot him, and when he did not die, they actually went to the hospital and shot him dead in the hospital. It's a very traumatic childhood. And these girls grow into teenagers, and they're expected to leave school. Their mother says they have to, and they start going to work. They go to work as housekeepers for a white family. So when they run away from home, they go to the next big city. I think it was New Orleans, although somehow I think somebody got to Washington, D.C. along the way. So they're forced to survive, to get jobs, to live their own lives and pay their bills. And I don't think they're very old at all. They're probably very young teenagers. So the girls are twins, as I said, but their characters are very different. Desiree is a little more her own person, very headstrong, very decisive. Stella is a little more bookish, quiet, calm, introverted. And surprisingly, how things turned out, she turned out to be the one with a lot of secrets. She's the one who decided to actually leave her sister. And the term passing is something my non-American audience may not be familiar with. Passing in the Black community are those who are light enough that they decided to live as white people. So Stella makes that decision. At the time, it was felt to be beneficial in many ways, socioeconomically, allowing advancement, sort of things that are easy to understand when you think of how the world was at the time in the US. So Desiree lives as a Black woman and marries a man who ends up being very abusive. She has a daughter called June who turns out to be very dark skinned. It was emphasized over and over again in this book. So my guess is she was quite dark skinned, or that was what the author was trying to portray. So it didn't work out. And Desiree returns home back to their mom with her daughter June. And June has to live in this Mallard town as a very dark-skinned child in a place where everybody is light-skinned. So she had her own trauma growing up in that town. Now, Stella, on the other hand, lives as a white woman. She marries a fairly affluent white man, and they end up living in California. Now, the way the world works, the way things wrap up, turns out that June, the daughter of Desiree, gotta make sure I'm saying it right, June, the daughter of Desiree, ends up in California for college. And she meets somebody who is exactly like her mother, who looks exactly like her mother. Turns out that is Stella. And she'd grown up hearing about a Stella twin sister who vanished. And the mother had looked for her, had gotten people to help search for her over the years, and no success. So she meets Stella, and she actually becomes friendly with Stella's daughter. I'm trying to remember her name. Might be Kennedy. I could be wrong. But she becomes friendly with her. They become well acquainted. This girl is in the performing arts, and June works, her kind of part-time job while a student was working in a theater where this girl performed. So they get quite familiar. It's very interesting how they get to know each other in that backwards kind of way. But, Stella, it took her a long time to even own up as to the truth of the whole thing, even when her daughter confronted her. At the end of the book, she makes peace with her daughter. She decides to be honest with her daughter. But it's very interesting. Her husband, that white man she married, at the end of the book, never gets to know, as far as we can tell, that his wife is actually not quite what she says she is. Instead of being like she told him, a white woman who has no family, that she's actually a mixed race woman who has a family but who has decided to pass into the white community, live as a white woman. And so she has sort of forsaken and left everybody that she used to know behind, because it just wouldn't work for her in her newfound society. So you get to see a lot about how the world is intertwined. Can you imagine the chance that June would meet her cousin? In effect, her cousin, her white cousin. Well, again, what would you even call her? She is a mixed race girl. She's mixed to some degree. And you also wonder how Stella carries on with her life. Living a lie is what I thought when I read that book. Claiming to be not quite what you say you are, just to carry on, just to stay in your socioeconomic, societal strata, just to be accepted where you are, and hoping that nobody discovers you someday, keeping such a huge secret. So it was one of those books I was reading and feeling uncomfortable for the people in the book, the characters. But having said that, it was a very well written book. The plot was very interesting. You always had something new to discover. I feel that it wasn't, a little bit of it was predictive, but not all of it. And I certainly had a good read, just navigating from the beginning all the way to the end. So I love the book. In summary, I loved that aspect of history. The author was very bold to have addressed that aspect of history, and to show us again kind of how we're all interconnected as human beings. You can only run so far, right? That's what I think she tried to portray in the book, because somehow these sisters, although apart, their daughters met. And all the truth came to light. So The Vanishing Half by Brit Bennett. If you do read it, let me know what you think. Like and subscribe and share with your friends. And I'll see you when I talk about my next read. Take care. Bye-bye.